Welcome to ZICA Academy YouTube channel. In this lecture, I want to examine single limiting factor using questions from ICAN May 2024, Performance Management. If you are coming across my lecture for the first time, please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe so that you don't miss my upcoming videos. If you are a returning subscriber, I say thank you for being part of this channel. Single limiting factor. Limiting factor can also be called key budget factor. Key budget factor or principal budgeting factor. This is a factor which is a binding constraint upon the organization. A factor that is a binding constraint upon the organization. That is, there are factors that restrict the expansion of an organization. Factors that hinders the expansion, factors that hinders the growth of an organization are said to be the limiting factor. With this factor, the entity, the organization, will not be able to satisfy the demand of the entire customers, or they will not be able to operate at the maximum capacity. So these factors include, number one, limiting factors. Limiting factors include, one, we may have limited demand, where demand is limited. Limited demand. Number two, limited skilled labor. Limited skilled labor. Three, you may have limitation in raw materials. Limited raw materials. Limitation in labor hour. Limited labor hours. These are the examples of limiting factor. What are the steps you need to take when solving problems involving single limiting factor? Steps for solving single limiting factor. Step number one is to identify the limiting factor. Identify the limiting factor. You calculate the amount required of that key resources. You calculate the amount required of the key resources. Amount required. To calculate the amount required, you have your demand times key resources. This will give you the amount of the key resources required. So you now compare it with the amount available. How much is available? Where the amount available is lower than the amount required, that means that resources, there will be a shortfall. That is, the amount required is more than the amount available. The amount available is lower than the amount required. In that case, you have a shortfall. But where the amount available is greater than the amount required, that means that resources is not a constraint to the entity. The resources is not a constraint. That is the first step. Step number two is to calculate the contribution per unit for each product. Calculate the contribution per unit for each product. Suppose you have products A, B, and C. Remember, your contribution is selling price. Selling price of each product. If you are given total revenue, you will need to divide the number of units demanded in order to get the selling price. If you are not given the selling price is a price for a unit of that product. You may be given the total revenue. So where the total revenue is given, the number of units demanded for each product will be given as well. So in that case, to calculate the selling price will be total revenue divided by number of units demanded. So from this selling price, you less variable cost. Variable costs include direct materials. Direct materials, you subtract it. Direct labor. Then you have variable production overheads. So by the time you subtract this, you get the contribution margin for each of the products. So this will give you the contribution per unit. Contribution margin. After your contribution margin, the third step is to calculate the contribution per limiting factor for each product. Calculate the contribution per limiting factor. How do you do that? You divide your contribution margin calculated in step 2. Your contribution margin, contribution per unit, or your contribution margin divided by unit of the limiting factor. Unit of it, not total, unit of the limiting factor. That will give you the contribution per limiting factor. The fourth step is to rank your contribution. Rank the contribution per limiting factor in descending order. You are going to rank it in descending order. That is, from the highest to the lowest. Rank the contribution per limiting factor in descending order. Ranking it from descending order means you rank it from the highest to the lowest. Step 5, consider if the organization is prioritizing any of the products or is given priority to any of the products. So where the entity is given priority to any of the products, you calculate the amount of the key resources that will be required for the product that is prioritized. You calculate the amount of the key resources that will be required for the one in which the priority is given. So you now calculate that key resources, you subtract it from the maximum available. So that means it's not the entire key resources, it's not the entire limiting factor that will be allocated this time around. You are going to subtract the one in which the priority is given, the amount allocated to the product that is prioritized. You subtract it from the maximum available. If you subtract it from the maximum available, then you get the remaining balance. So it is the remaining balance that will be allocated to the product on the basis of their priority ranking. So what I'm trying to say is that let us assume the entity must produce product A. If they should produce maybe 200 units of product A, 200 units of product A. Remember, demand for product A might be 500, but the entity must meet certain demand of 200 units. So in that case, you are going to have 200 times key resources. Remember, I've told you that the key resources is also called the limiting factor. So you subtract what you obtain from the result. You subtract it from the maximum available of that key resources. You know, the total available. The total available of the key resources might be 20,000. So if you have, let us know this is 5. 200 times 5, that will give us 1,000. That means you are going to subtract 1,000 from 20,000. If the available key resources is 20,000. Please take note of that. Then, if you subtract 1,000 from that 20,000, that means you'll be left with balance of 19,000. It is that 19,000 that you are going to allocate on the basis of your priority ranking. Step number 6, allocate the available limiting factor on the basis of their priority ranking. Just that is, allocate the available limiting factor on the basis of their priority ranking. Just so you might have product mix. So you have available key limiting factor. So now remember total available. The total available may be this. It might be 20,000, it might be 40,000. It is this quantity you want to allocate. Then to first ranking product, the product that is ranked first, you allocate to that. Since there are sufficient of that key resources, you can still produce up to the maximum units of that resources demanded. Then after you subtract this from the available, you have the balance. Then to second ranked product, the product that is ranked second. So product mix will still be the demand since you have sufficient of that. Then you have the balance. Then to third ranked product, assuming you have three of the products. If there are 3 products, that means what you have as the balance is what you are going to allocate. Then the balance will now be nil. Remember, you don't have sufficient key resources to allocate to this third ranked product. So you will not be able to meet the demand for this product. So to calculate the product mix for this product now, product mix for this one now, it will be amount allocated, the amount you allocate here, divided by key resources per unit of that product. So this will give you the product mix for this. So you have this. So this is the step. So by the time we take a work example, you will understand me better. So now let's take a question from ICAN May 2024 as a work example. Please keep watching. Example. This question is obtained from ICAN May 2024 Performance Management, question number 7. Jumbo Tailors, Nigeria Limited, manufactures 3 unique wares for which the maximum revenue for the coming year is estimated as follows. You have trousers, 8,250,000. Jackets, 9,880,000. Skirts, 12,390,000. Summarized unit cost data are as follows. We have for products, trousers, jackets, and skirts. Direct materials, 1,900 and 700. Direct labor, 500, 450, 350. Variable cost, 800, 1,600, and 1,000. Fixed cost, 250, 500, 400. Total cost, 2,550, 3,450, 2,450. The allocation of fixed cost was derived from the last year production level, and this may be reviewed if current output plans are different. Estimated selling prices are, we have for product, we have price. Trousers, 3,300 naira. Jackets, 3,800 naira. Skirts, 2,950. The products are processed on sewing machines housed in the building of 3 blocks. Block A contains type 1 machine, which has an estimated maximum machine hours, capacity of 39,200 machine hours, available in the forthcoming year, with fixed overhead cost of 1,960,000 per annum. Block B contains type 2 machine, of which 20,000 machine hours are estimated in the forthcoming year, with a fixed overhead cost of 1.5 million naira per annum. Block C also contains type 2 machine, which also has an estimate of 16,000 machine hours available in the forthcoming year. The fixed overhead cost of 740,000 naira is estimated per annum for Block C. The required machine hours for 1 unit of output for each jeans on each type of machine are as follows. You have product, trouser, jacket, skirts. Type 1 machine, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Type 2 machine, 3 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours. You are required to A. Determine the optimal production plan, which Jumbo Tailors Nigeria Limited should adopt. B. Calculate the total profit that would be made if the production plan in A above is adopted. Now, let's have the solution to the question. Solution. The name of the entity is Jumbo Tailors Nigeria Limited. The first step is to identify the limiting factor. That is step 1. Step 1 is to identify the limiting factor. I've told you that to calculate the limiting factor, you multiply your demand by the unit of the limiting factor. If you look at this question, you have been given the total revenue. You are not given the number of units demanded. Therefore, you will need to compute the number of units demanded. Calculation of unit demand of each product. The first product we have trousers, 8,250,000. That is the total revenue. You have been told the maximum revenue for the coming year. So this is the revenue from trousers. And you are equally given the selling price of trousers to be 3,300. To get the number of units demanded, you divide the revenue by the selling price. So we have for trousers, revenue is 8,250,000 divided by the selling price, which is 3,300 naira. So that will give you the units of trouser demanded. 8,250,000 divided by 3,300. So we have 2,500 units. 2,500 units. The number of units of trousers demanded is 2,500. The second product is jackets. The revenue from jackets is 9,880,000. And the selling price of jackets is 3,800. So you have jackets. The revenue is 9,880,000 divided by the selling price per jacket, which is 3,800. 9,880,000 divided by 3,800. So we have 2,600 units. Then the third product is skirts. The revenue is 12,390,000, while the selling price is 2,950. So we have skirts. Revenue 12,390,000 divided by selling price 2,950. That will give us 12,390,000 divided by 2,950. So we have 4,200 units. So that is the number of units of each of the products demanded. Step 2 now, identification of limiting factor. Identification limiting factor. We have two potentially limiting factors. One of it is machine type 1 machine hours. And you are given the maximum machine hours capacity, 39,200 machine hours available. What is available for type 1 machine hours is 39,200. For type 2 machine hours, the one used in block B, the available is 20,000. For type 2 machine hours again, the one used in block C is 16,000. So the potential limiting factors are type 1 and type 2 machine hours. Now let me have type 2 machine hours. Then we also have type 1 machine hours. So if you go through the question, you were given the required machine hours for 1 unit of output for each genes on each type of machine as follows. So these are the machine hours required for 1 unit for type 1 and type 2. So we have 3 products: trousers, we have jackets, and you also have skirts. Type 1 machine, trousers 2 hours, jackets 4 hours, skirts 6 hours. For type 1 machine, trousers 2 hours, jackets 4 hours, skirts 6 hours. You now multiply this by the demand. The number of trousers demanded is 2,500 units. Jackets 2,600, skirts 4,200. So we have 2,500, then 2,600, and then 4,200. So if you multiply this, 2 times 2,500, that is 5,000. This is machine hours. Then 4 times 2,600. So we have 10,400 machine hours. 6 times 4,200. Then you have 25,200. So if you add it together, 25,200 plus 10,400 plus 5,000, you have 40,600. This is the machine hours required. Machine hours required. To attain the number of units demanded, to be able to produce the units demanded, you will require 40,600 machine hours. Type 1 machine hours. Now let's calculate the type 2 machine hours required. So type 2 machine hours, 3 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours. 3 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours, multiplied by the unit demanded. Trousers 25, jackets 26, skirts 42, 2,500 units, 2,600 units, and 4,200 units. If you multiply this, it will be 8,400. 8,400 hours. 6 times 2,600. That gives us 15,600 hours. Then for this, 3 times 2,500, that will be 7,500 hours. How many hours will be required? 2 machine hours will be required for the 3 products. So 15,600 plus 8,400 plus 7,500. So we have 31,500. The number of machine hours, type 2 machine hours required is 31,500, while 40,600 machine hours, type 1 machine hours will be required as well. So how many machine hours is available? You want to compare your required with the available. Back to the question. You were told block A contains type 1 machine, which has an estimated maximum machine hours capacity of 39,200 machine hours. So the available is 39,200 for machine type 1. For type 1 machine hours, we have 39,200. Then block B contains type 2 machine, of which 20,000 machine hours are estimated in the forthcoming year with a fixed overhead cost of this. So the available type 2 machine is 20,000 in block B. Then in block C also contains type 2 machine, which also has an estimate of 16,000 machine hours. So the available type 2 machine, we have 20,000 in block B, 16,000 in block C. So if you add it together, 20,000 plus 16,000, you have 36,000 available. So you may have surplus hour. Surplus will be positive, or deficit, negative. The one required here is 40,600. I mean, surplus will be negative, while deficit will be positive. You require 40,600 type 1 machine hours, and the one available is not up to that. That means 39,200 machine hours will not be sufficient to produce the number of units of the 3 products demanded. 39,200 available will not be sufficient to produce the units demanded. Therefore, you have a shortfall. 40,600 minus 39,200. You have 1,400. So since this will not be enough, what you require for the production is 40,600. 39,200 will not be enough. Therefore, type 1 machine hours is a limiting factor. Then for type 2 machine hour, what you have available is more than what you require for the production. You have sufficient type 2 machine hours. So you even have a surplus. So this is not a limiting factor. So what is the difference? 31,500 minus 36,000. Then you have 4,500. You have the surplus of this. This is surplus because the available is more than required. So this one is not enough because what is required is more than what is available. Therefore, type 1 machine hour is the limiting factor. Then after this step 3, Step 3, you calculate contribution per unit of each product. Calculation of unit contribution for each product. There are 3 products. We have trousers, we have jackets, and you equally have skirts. So to calculate contribution, you have selling price. Back to the question, you have the selling price for trousers 3,300, jackets 3,800, skirts 2,950. Selling price trousers 3,300, jackets 3,800, and skirts 2,950. Then from this selling price, you less unit variable cost. And what are the unit variable costs? It includes direct materials 1,900 and 700. Direct materials trouser 1,900 for jackets, 700 for skirts. Back to the question, we equally have direct labor 500, 450, 350. Direct labor, we have 500, 450, then 350. Then we also have variable cost 800, 1,600, 1,000. Variable cost of 800, 1,600, and 1,000. So the next item is fixed cost. And remember, fixed cost is not to be considered since contribution is selling price less variable cost. These 3 cost elements are variable in nature, so fixed cost will be excluded. So now let's subtract the variable cost to get the contribution. Contribution margin. Contribution margin. 3,300 minus 1,000 minus 500 minus 800. You'll be left with 1,000. 1,000. For jackets, we have 3,800 minus 900 minus 450 minus 1,600. So we have 850. 850. Then for skirts, we have 2,950 minus 700 minus 350 minus 1,000. So we have 900 as our contribution margin. The next step, step 4, we compute contribution per limiting factor. Contribution calculation of contribution per limiting factor. We have three products: trousers, jackets, and skirts. So the unit contribution as obtained from step 3, contribution margin from step 3, we have 1,850 and 900. Trouser 1,000, jackets 850, skirts 900. So back to the question. Remember, we have identified type 1 machine hours as the limiting factor. Type 1 machine hours has been identified as the limiting factor. And the type 1 machine hours for trouser is 2 hours, jackets 4 hours, skirts 6 hours. That's the type 1 machine hours. 2, 4, 6. 2 hours, 4 hours, and 6 hours. This is type 1 machine hour. So if you now divide this, the contribution margin by unit of the limiting factor, so you have contribution per limiting factor, which will be 1,000 divided by 2, that is 500 naira. 850 divided by 4, that gives us 212, 212 naira, 50 kobo. Then we have 900 divided by 6, then we have 150 naira. So the next step is to rank it. Let's have our ranking. This is the highest one, which will take the first position in the ranking. This is the next one to it. It will take second position, while this will take the third position. That is. Then the next step is the allocation. Step 5 now. Now let's have our allocation. The entity is not given priority to any of the products. You were not told that Jumbo is given any priority to any of the products based on the information provided in the question. So now let's prepare the allocation. Allocation table. Can have product mix. So we have type 1 machine hours available. The available type 1 machine hours. What is available is 39,200. Available is 39,200. The product that is ranked first is trousers. So we now have 2 trousers. Remember, the number of units of trousers demanded is 2,500. So we have 2,500 units times how many hours is required for a unit of trouser? We have 2 hours. So times 2 hours. Then 5 times 2, that will be 5,000. So that means you still have sufficient hour to produce trousers. So you can produce 2,500 units. We'll be able to achieve that demand for trousers. So what will now be the balance available? Balance after trouser has been considered. You'll be left with 39,200 minus 5,000. That will be 34,200 hours. Then the one that is ranked second is jackets. So we now have two jackets. How many units of jackets were demanded? Jackets, you have 2,600 units. 2,600 units. To produce a unit of jacket, you will require 4 hours. You will need 4 hours times 4 hours. 2,600 times 4. That gives us 10,400 hours. You still have sufficient hours to produce jacket. That means you will still be able to produce 2,600 units of jackets. Then, what will now be the balance available after jackets have been considered? 10,400 from 34,200. Then you have the balance of 23,800. Then the product that is ranked third is skirt. Skirt is ranked third. So skirt is to be considered now. Two skirts. Now, the number of units of skirts demanded is 4,200 units. 4,200 units of skirts were demanded. To achieve a unit of skirt, you will require 6 hours. 6 hours is required for a unit of skirt. So times 6 hours. So 4,200 times 6. That gives us 25,200 hours. This is what is required to produce 4,200 units of skirt. And you're only left with 23,800. That means you did not have sufficient hours for skirt. So you only allocate the remaining hours, 23,800. You allocate it to skirt since you did not have up to this. So what will now be the balance? Balance now will be knee. Then with these hours you have allocated to skirt, how many units of skirt would this 23,800 hours be sufficient to produce? So skirt now, 23,800 divided by, to produce a unit of skirt, remember you need 6 hours. So divided by 6 hours. So we have 23,800 divided by 6. That gives us 3,967. So 3,967 units. So optimal product mix. You have trousers, jackets, and skirts. So you'll be able to produce 2,500 of trousers, 2,600 units of jackets, and 3,967 of skirts. So we have 2,500 units for trousers, 2,600 units of jackets, and 3,967 units of skirts. That is the solution to the first part of the question. If you look at the requirement A, you are required to determine the optimal production plan which Jumbo Tailors Nigeria Limited should adopt. That is the solution to that. B, you have to calculate the total profit that would be made if the production plan in A above is adopted. You want to calculate the total profit that will be made if you adopt that production plan. Calculation of total profit, or you can just prepare profit statement. Let me have profit statement. So you have total contribution. There are 3 products. We have 3 products: trousers, we have jackets, and we have skirts. So the contribution from trouser, we have 1,000, jacket 850, skirt 900. 1,000 times multiply by the maximum production of each product. Trouser 2,500, jacket 2,600, skirts 3,967. So we have 2,500, 2,600, 3,967. So this will be 2.5 million naira. 850 times 2,600. That gives us 2,210,000. Then the third product, we have 900 times 3,967. So we have 3,570,300. So if you sum up the contribution plus 2,210,000 plus 2.5 million, so we have 8,280,300. That is the total contribution from the 3 products. So from the total contribution, you less the fixed cost. Less fixed cost. So we have block A, block B, and block C. So the fixed cost from block A, we have 1,960,000. From block B, you have 1.5 million. From block C, you have 740,000. So you add 1,960,000 plus 1.5 million plus 740,000. So 1,960,000, 1.5 million, and then 760,000. 740,000. So what is the total fixed cost? 1,960,000 plus 1.5 million plus 740,000. So we have 4.2 million. 4.2 million. If you subtract 4.2 million from the total contribution, we have the total profit. So the total profit is 4,080,300 naira. This marks this end of the solution to the question. Please don't forget to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe. Drop the love emoji. Thanks for watching ZICA.